Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the game Manor Lords, which was just released yesterday on Steam. I've got about 6 to 7 hours in this game, so it's not going to be super in-depth. This is kind of just my first thoughts. So when you go to start a new game, you need to pick a character portrait and design a coat of arms. There's not much choice with the character portrait and you can't customise it at all, but that actually works really well for me personally. Then I can just pick one of the 2 female characters and move on from there. Otherwise, if you've got too much choice here, I'll end up tweaking the hair, tweaking the nose, etc. And then it's quite a long time before you actually get into playing the game. So that works fine for me personally. With your coat of arms, there's a lot of options to customise it, and it's quite unlikely that yours is going to end up looking exactly like someone else's. I really like the inclusion of the Lancaster/York type rose, and also his very angry looking squirrel. That is delightful, and I'm interested to know if that was ever on an actual coat of arms. The soundtrack hits you straight away. It sounds amazing. With some games you start to get a bit tired of the soundtrack and it ends up sounding quite repetitive long before you're close to being done with the actual game. I very much doubt if that will ever be the case with this game. The actual game is a city builder RTS type one, which is medieval themed, and it sticks very authentically to this theme in all the artwork. It seems the game mechanics at quite a deep level, so I'm quite impressed with this. You allocate families in your village to collect resources, which are then used to sustain the population and to expand and develop your settlement, and then you can build other settlements as you grow. You can get attacked by raiders and bandits, but this doesn't seem to be a huge part of the game unless you deliberately make it so when you're first setting up. The building and robe system is probably one of the best designed that I've seen so far in an RTS game. The housing and fields are flexible plots, so you're not massively constricted by the terrain / your other buildings. You can kind of work around them to some extent. This is actually fairly historically accurate because urban planning in like a grid style wasn't widespread in medieval Europe until the Renaissance, which was the late 1400s, and this game is set in the 1400s. So from the technology in the game, I don't think it's the Renaissance period yet. So this is actually fairly historically accurate, and it gives the towns quite a sort of organic feel, like they've just kind of grown themselves, Where's page 3? Oh, there we go. Okay, there's a lot of freedom about where you can put your extraction type buildings, like your woodcutters and your firewood buildings, etc. And then you can just move these around. Your other buildings, besides your fields and your housing, are not resizable, but you can choose whether or not to snap them to the road, and you could just build road around them. You do need to build road really everywhere if you've got a building, otherwise it's going to take your villagers a long time to get from their place of work to transporting stuff to another part of the village. So it is quite important to build road. You can just quite easily delete and rebuild it, but you can't delete the King's Road, which is already the pre-existing road on the map. The whole building system seems very smooth and convenient, and they've done a really excellent job here. The villagers have to drop off the resources, and then you need to have some unassigned families to actually go and construct the building. So this is much more realistic than it just being like an instant place the building and it's done. The resource and stats layout on the top bar is really clear and understandable, and there's concise information when you hover over a particular statistic or number or what have you, with the keywords highlighted, so then you can look these up in the in-game guide. So I think that works really well. In terms of the role of religion, you have to build a church in order to expand basically, or you can't upgrade any of the housing, and it affects your leader influence and makes the populace happier. I really like the way he's done this, because in a lot of medieval themed games, I think that developers often either trivialize or kind of gloss over the role of religion, and in medieval society, religion did have a much bigger role than it does today. It had a really big role in how society, politics and day-to-day life functioned, and I'm not sure if it's because developers are worried about offending people, or it's just that we live in a much more secular society today, so they just don't really think about it. But I think often it's not something that's represented well in medieval themed games. The developer in this case has definitely made a really good go. Like you just can't expand without it. So it's a really fundamental to your game mechanics. In terms of combat, to defend against raiders and bandits, you can found a militia from your adult male population. You can see how many you've got on your top bar over here. And you need to source armaments either by manufacturing them or purchasing them in the trading post. You can also hire mercenaries, or you can use a combination of mercenaries and militia. If you use militia, this is free up front, but the villagers who you called up are no longer doing their jobs, so this is indirectly costing you in terms of the lost production. I like the realism of this. It's like in Stronghold Crusader, a woodcutter dies en route to the stockpile, you lose the wood he was going to bring you. If you hire mercenaries, you then can't use that money to expand or develop. I haven't really done enough battles yet to really comment much on this, to be honest. Some criticisms. I am aware this is an early access game and some of these issues will very likely be resolved in due course, but it wouldn't really be a review if I didn't mention anything that I thought could be improved, so here goes. A clearer differentiation between the regional wealth and the treasury would be quite good. I figured this out in the end through some very detailed reading of the guides and whatnot, but it is a bit difficult to figure out what you can spend the regional wealth on versus what you can spend your own personal treasury on, and it would be good if this was made a little bit clearer. In terms of home manufacturing, to make a lot of more processed products like clothing, weaponry, things like this, what you have to do is you have to actually upgrade the housing and you can make them there. This wasn't actually super obvious, and I only kind of found this out by chance when I was just looking through the housing. I was finding it quite difficult to make weapons, and I was looking in the industry bit and I was trying to buy them in the trading post, but then I needed more money to be able to unlock the trade route, so it actually took me quite a while before I figured out you could manufacture them in the homes. You could maybe have like a button on the industry part of the building menu and sort of highlight the homes that aren't specialised yet. That would possibly be quite helpful. Overall, I really like this game. I think it's very promising. I don't think it's going to be one of those early access games that sort of peters out and stagnates. It's clearly a labour of love by its sole developer, and I'm very interested to see how it develops from here.